Well, hello and welcome to another Diving Deeper from Longfleet Baptist Church. My name's Ken, I'm the minister here, and I'm joined by Janet, our church secretary. We've had a bit of a break, so apologies for that, but we're getting back into it now, and we're looking at some of the appearances of Jesus after his resurrection and before his ascension. And today we're considering what we call the Great Commission. So there's the final few words from Jesus to his disciples in the Gospel of Matthew. And I'll just read part of that. So Matthew 28 verse 18, Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you to the very end of the age." On Sunday in our sermon, I spoke about how this was quite a general command. Wasn't really specific.
Yeah.
It was just like go and do this. And quite often we wait for really specific commands. And I suppose we do see that in the Bible. We do, Mary had very specific commands about what was going to happen with Jesus.
Yeah.
When the disciples were told to go and get a donkey for Jesus, that was really specific. But quite often it's very general, isn't it? So have you ever had a very specific command from God, and how did he reveal that to you?
So I can think of two occasions. So before I became a leader here at Longfleet, I really felt in my prayer time that God was saying to me, "I'm going to call you into leadership at Longfleet Baptist Church." And at that time, I couldn't quite see how that was going to happen, because I had a young baby who was about a year old and a toddler about 3, and I couldn't quite work out how on earth that was going to fit in. And I said, "Oh yes, well, perhaps sometime in the future when the children have gone to school." And within probably a year, a vacancy came up, and I didn't get elected at that time, but about 6 months later, and some more vacancies came up, and I was elected. And my husband was perfectly supportive of that, and stepped in to sort of fill the gaps when I went out to meetings and so on. And it clearly was God calling me and sort of preparing me in advance that this was coming down the road for me, really. The second time was when I felt God was saying to me, "No, I want you to step aside from main church leadership, because I want you to take on the leadership of the youth work in the church, because I want the church to have a messy church." And I couldn't have possibly done that with the other duties I was doing. And I heard God saying that to me at a youth work conference where I was in a session about messy church, and I felt God was saying, "I want this for Longfleet." And I mean, we had a successful messy church here for 10 years, so it clearly was right. And the church backed my instinct as well, which was really good.
So sometimes God does give you very specific things. So I knew the day I became a Christian, really, I was 19, I knew I was going to become an ordained minister. Very, very clearly heard that I would become a... actually, the term that I heard was professional Christian, and I kind of interpreted that to mean an ordained minister. But sort of similar to that question then, so if God does sometimes give specific commands, but have you ever felt God call you to use your initiative without having very specific command or guidance? Like in the Great Commission, he says, "Go and do this," but doesn't really give them... He's trained them for 3 years, but he doesn't really give them... He doesn't say, "This is how you're going to do it." And I felt when I was called to army chaplaincy, that was the call to army chaplaincy, and it didn't really matter how that was achieved, and that it was up to me what denomination to choose from. And I looked at the denominations I was familiar with, and really they were Anglican, Catholic and Baptist. They were the only ones I knew, and out of those, Baptist was the most obvious one to me. And I felt that God just said, "This is where I want you, and how you get there I don't really mind." And in the army they have a thing called mission command, where you train everyone to such a high standard that when you give them a task, you expect them just to be able to do it. So a corporal in charge of 8 soldiers, he doesn't need an officer supervising him down to the minutiae. He can just get on with it. You tell him, "I want you to take that position," and he would just do it himself. And I think a lot of the time our faith works like that. God says,
Yeah.
I want you to achieve this. You've got
Yeah.
the knowledge and the experience. Off you go
Yeah.
and achieve it. So.
Yeah, I had similar experience. We've got lots of groups here who are outside groups, but who use our premises.
Yeah.
And one of them, the Smile group that's attached to FaithWorks, were coming to our premises. And I really felt that God was saying to me, I want you to engage with this group because they're using your premises. And I didn't really know I was going to do that, but they were running their coffee morning here, so I started dropping in. And I soon discovered that just dropping in wasn't enough. So I started to kind of commit myself to come every week. And it took a while, including getting involved in some of the other things that they do, which were more social, which gave me an opportunity to get to know the parents and get to know the children before I really felt as if I was doing something worthwhile in the group, really. And now a lot of them will talk to me about the situations they're in, and I can talk to them about my faith as well.
Yeah.
But that was a longer process and left to me to kind of work out how I was going to do it.
Really. Yeah. And you have worked hard in that environment to earn their trust and to become part of that group. So there are some theologians and scholars throughout Christian history who have described what they call the apostolic era. So it's the era when the disciples were about, when Paul and Luke were about. And then when that ended, the Great Commission was complete. They said the Great Commission was just for that group of people, just for that period of time, the apostolic era. And, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That command from Jesus was just for those people. What do you think of that?
I don't think it was just for those people for a number of reasons, really. First of all, they only evangelized the bit of the world they knew.
Yes.
So there were a lot of areas that they didn't get to in the years that they lived from after Jesus died.
Yeah.
And places they wouldn't even have known existed. And frankly, if it had been just them, then how would we all have got to know? Because 2,000 years have passed. If nobody else ever said, oh, well, this Great Commission means I've got to preach the gospel as well, we would not have known about that ourselves, really.
No.
So, no, I don't. I'm not quite sure how people kind of come to that conclusion.
It does seem a bit odd, but it is quite a popular sort of thought out there, especially among sort of theologians and scholars, perhaps not amongst the sort of general laity, as you might call it. But one thing I think is that these disciples represent the ordinary, everyday Christian. So yes, absolutely, they existed. They were real people, but Jesus called ordinary, everyday people to represent ordinary, everyday Christians, and therefore this command is for us as much as it was for those 11. Those 11 represent us, and why would Matthew have gone to the time and trouble of writing it down if it wasn't for everyone? We do know that the disciples, or certainly early Christian tradition, suggests that those 11 disciples spread broadly across the Roman world. But like you say, that was their known world. They spread across the Roman Empire, but didn't get to the Americas or southern tip of Africa or Australia, and so they didn't know the world as we know the world. There are some Bible passages that sort of say, Paul says, I think, I can't remember, it's Corinthians, he says, you have heard this message which has been spread across the world. And, you can't. I wouldn't interpret that to mean that it's done. The job has been done.
No.
And then Jesus is clear. He says, "Go and make disciples." Is there a difference between making disciples and winning converts?
Yeah, I think so. Often, certainly in my kind of years of experience, people come to Christ. So you've made a convert, but if you don't then encourage them on in discipleship by, getting behind them and teaching them stuff and encouraging them to, do what we're talking about, being those that spread the gospel, then actually often their faith either doesn't grow beyond that initial conversion, or it becomes too difficult and they drop away.
Yeah.
And then, you've not made a disciple.
No. No.
And
I actually, as a church minister, as a sort of pastor teacher, if you like, I get quite frustrated with some, to be really honest, with some of the sort of very evangelistic pastors and teachers who seem to think they're doing a more important work. And actually, the work of nurturing Christians is vitally important.
Yes.
You've got to have people in churches being nurtured, being discipled.
Yeah.
So yes, and actually we need, Paul lists the various gifts. You need people who are evangelists who will go out and have the confidence to draw people in. But you need people in churches as well. Like you in that smart group, you need someone there who is there, a Christian presence among them.
Well, and to be honest, all of us, in some respects, in the church, are helping to make disciples, because even the most experienced Christian sometimes needs somebody to get alongside them and encourage them, or perhaps correct them sometimes if they've kind of gone off the rails a bit. It's the role of all of us, not just those who are in leadership like us who are more mature, but even sometimes you need to be brought up short by somebody who's not been a Christian very long, but who gives you a different take on something, and you've got to be open to that, really.
And it's not an individual responsibility. One person hasn't got to do all of it.
No.
It's a group responsibility. It's the church's responsibility. So I was talking to our treasurer the other day and saying, actually, you contribute to this Great Commission, because the church has got to have a treasurer. We couldn't function without that. Unfortunately, we can't function without money. And so that he contributes massively to this Great Commission by allowing other people in the church to go to do this stuff. So
and the people that do those sorts of jobs not only bring practical skills, but they also come with a spiritual take on managing the money. So it's not just all the books balance, but actually, these are our priorities. We need to be able to spend our money in the areas that are priorities for the gospel. And all the treasurers I've known here have been those sorts of people as well.
So there is a difference between making disciples and winning converts, and I think that the language that Jesus uses, he uses it very carefully. It's not just about winning souls. It's actually about making those people disciples and obeying the commands. Baptize them, teach them, and make them obey my commands. So I hope you've enjoyed, as we've reflected a bit on the Great Commission, and that you are thinking, how are you contributing to the Great Commission? As you're watching this, how have you in the past, and how are you now? And like I said, it's not about everyone going out there standing on street corners preaching the gospel. It's about using your gifts and your talents and your experience and your knowledge. So I do hope that if you're a Christian and you're watching this, you are somehow contributing to that Great Commission, going winning all disciples. So we do pray for you, and we hope that God would bless you and his Spirit would be with you in that. Thank you. Thanks, Janet.
Bye.